Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button, and if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. George Jones, The Grand Tour. George Jones was an American singer, songwriter, country icon who is regarded as one of the greatest country singers of all time during the twilight years of his life. His painstaking adherence and loyalty to the genre is certainly something worth praising, attracting the admiration of musical legends like Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, and Frank Sinatra. And now I get the privilege of reviewing his 1974 album, The Grand Tour, widely considered one of his best. Prior to this album, George had suffered a pretty abysmal 5 years. During the 60s, he was heralded on the Billboard country charts, but by the end of the decade, he was unhappy with producers and the overall declination of quality his music endured. He hadn't had a number one hit since 1967. Plus, it didn't help that his wife at the time, Tammy Wynette, was really starting to make a name for herself, scoring 9 number one hits in the span of 4 years, and her greatest hits compilation achieving gold status, far more sales than George had ever seen. At the time, people were starting to think George may just be an accessory to his more successful and famous wife. But this album, The Grand Tour, flipped all that around in George's favor. So, let's dive in. What are my thoughts on The Grand Tour? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with there being 2 of them. The first being Once You've Had the Best, which is actually a cover of the Johnny Paycheck song of the same name, but most people seem to be reminiscent of this version, and I think this one is pretty nice. Instrumentally, it's not too deviant of the norm at all, aside from some beautiful strings and occasional piano. In fact, I swear I've heard that exact same guitar strum on several other country songs before. What really sells George's music is his vocal ability and the way he can gravitate a listener in with his emotional range. And he really demonstrates that here as he sings these lyrics about how there's nothing better when you've had the best out of love. Very nice track. And the second and final single, the opener and title track of The Grand Tour, one of George's biggest hits and his first number one hit in 7 years. And for a damn good reason. This song is immaculate. Much more piano-heavy and adult contemporary than I would expect from a country album. The guitar presence here is minimal, but its more melancholy tone helps to accent the heartbreaking vocal performance from George. However, it's the lyrical content here that really shines, with George giving a tour of this house post-breakup, detailing all the places of the house which correlate with a memory of him and his wife. And now that it's all over, those memories only haunt him of good times that will likely never return. Phenomenal song, a classic for a reason. Now for the rest of the tracks. Darlin' is a pretty standard country song. There's not much here that's all that memorable. The guitar has a nice howl to it, the drums are especially gentle. It's a soft instrumental, and when backed with George's full body voice, it's got some solid emotional weight to it. The problem with this one, as previously mentioned, is that it's not all that noteworthy. It barely lasts for 2 minutes. Pretty standard heartfelt lyrics in this one too, just wanting this woman to be there for him one last time before she leaves. It's nothing you'll remember, but it's fine. Pass Me By, parentheses, if you're only passing through, is incredibly similar to Once You've Had the Best in more ways than just one. The tempo is the only noticeable differentiation, with it being slightly faster and more upbeat. The guitar has the same twang, even with the same cry, and the drums are still as delicate as ever. But if there's one thing that's consistently enjoyable here is George's vocals. His emotional range is just so satisfying and really complements the downtrodden instrumentals, as he sings these lyrics about this traveling woman with whom he's skeptical about, asking her to simply pass him by if she's passing through. This is a nice track. She'll Love the One She's With is one of the slower tracks on this record, being a very piano-centric look into this woman's romantic life. How if she's not with someone she'll love, she will love the one that she's with. Very nice word switching there. It's simple. And speaking of simple, my god, this instrumental feels extra sappy and melodramatic in the piano, the strings, the withdrawn guitar, and forlorn harmonies. Moving at this glacial pace as George repeats that title line for the umpteenth time, it gets repetitive and tiresome pretty quickly. And even at 2 minutes and 44 seconds, it feels like a long time. I'll pass on this one. The Weatherman is a huge stylistic jump on the record, but frankly, a much needed one, where instead of being the typical confessional country plea the rest of the album has been, This one becomes much more energetic and upbeat, introducing a stronger rock influence, yet still being firmly planted in country. The drums have a nice snap, the guitar still has a good twang, there's a fucking harmonica solo, and while it is brief, it's beautiful. George's vocals are surprisingly not the prime focus of the track. He's always been a balladeer, that's where some of his best hits come from, but to factor in this instrumental change, the impactfulness of his vocals do suffer, but it's not a bad performance. Lyrically, it's about how this weatherman predicts the forecast of their love, calling for hurricanes, heavy rain, chilly winds, but then the storm subsides and the sun returns by the end of the song. Easily an album standout, great track. Borrowed Angel slows things right back down to familiarity, and this is kind of where the slow tracks start to homogenize pretty heavily with one another. Same light drum, same weeping guitar, although I do like the fluttery piano that shows up whenever it wants to. We're also back to where George's vocals are the centerpiece, and it's still good as always. The melody is very enjoyable, really the only defining factor of this track in comparison to the rest of the album. Lyrically, it seems to be about this promiscuous woman cheating on her husband with George, who's mainly using her for when he's lonely. Not the most endearing message at all, and honestly a forgettable song to boot. She Told Me So is a tender piano ballad, and I quite enjoy this one. Unlike just being another slow country song, I feel like this one could have been appropriate for adult contemporary. The piano gets the spotlight, plus the harmonizing background vocals are very nice and surprisingly lower pitched. They add this grand element to an otherwise minimal track. There's some nice guitar work as well, the drums have slightly more impact. George's vocals, yet again, are great as he sings about this thriving relationship, how things just only seem to get better and better the more time they spend together, culminating in this chorus where if she spouted something blatantly incorrect, he'd believe it if it came out of her mouth. While the message does border on toxic codependency, the song is really well written and well performed. Good stuff. Mary Don't Go Round features an even more minimal instrumental. The percussion here might as well not exist, virtually being replaced by this bass line, which is really steady and enjoyable. It keeps a solid groove going with the occasional guitar riff. George's vocals really stand out here as a result, much more so than on most of the record, getting into a more aggressive, growly tone for the chorus. It's kind of refreshing. Lyrically, it's about this relationship that was crumbling and how this wife of his, Mary, went out a lot, frequently was the life of the party, but now that they've settled things, Mary doesn't go out anymore. Not a bad track. Who Will I Be Loving Now is just another one of these slow country songs, and I swear it's so amazing how similar like at least 4 of these songs sound. Same guitar, pretty similar tempo, at least the percussion has a little bit more weight to it, but it does little to stand out as a whole. Still can't really say anything bad about George's voice, however, incredible vocalist, great ability to portray emotions, plus those background singers are back and add this volume, which is nice as George sings about this deceiving woman who he thought was happy, but ended up leaving, and now he asks who will he love since he can't love her. Very well written, but my god, it is not memorable in the track list. And finally, the closer, Our Private Life, is an energetic closer to the album, and I'm so grateful this one exists, as this is an amazing song. George's vocals are actually really good here. Instead of just trying to sing a bit higher than normal, he almost sounds a little bit playful on this one, over the skipping drums, wavy guitar, and the choir-like harmonies that bring in this slightly relaxed undertone, counteracting George's more off-the-wall vocals. Lyrically, the song tackles celebrity culture and how there's really no privacy anymore. All the details of their life are put on full display. This was apparently co-written by Tammy Wynette, and I think the two of them did a great job here. One of the best on the album, hands down. Overall, I did come away from this album positively, despite a bunch of the negative things I may have said. George's vocals were easily the peak moments here. I think he truly makes all these tracks here good. However, in one cohesive unit, this album has quite a few blemishes. So many of the songs sound remarkably similar, bordering on Control-C, Control-V. Yet despite that flaw, most of these tracks individually were actually really good. And as a result, I'm quite glad I got this viewer suggestion. I'm feeling about a 6 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.